While keeping our focus on the continuing call for restructuring, we've got this morning Mr. Gbega Adejumo, who is the Public Secretary of the Yoruba Summit Group. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, there's been a lot of response, as a matter of fact, recently that coming through from the government saying they will not be under pressure for any of these matters to go on. But then we also do know that I think El-Rufai was heading that committee for the APC to look into that restructuring and see what can or how they can attend to it. So one wonders where to place government stance. But given the at least the overall perspectives from what you've seen up north as well, do you have any form of encouragement that, who knows, this call may be gathering momentum and we may be getting somewhere or get a lot more listening ears to achieve this call?
Well, I'll take on the last speaker first. I'll just want you to allow me. You want the Legislative House to do its duty. And I'm wondering, are we talking about the same Legislative House that said anything that comes from the president, they're just going to rubber stamp, where the deputy senate president is seen kneeling down to the president? It's like we are not given the truth, the premium here about the role of our legislators in this current disposition, which is, of course, predicated upon the faulty structure that gave birth to the 1999 Constitution that will not allow the legislators to be able to function well. That is one. Another thing is this. We have forgotten again how things are done in this particular climate called Nigeria. When the agitation for resource control was so heightened up during the time of President Obasanjo, I want us to remember, it was not the Legislative House, it was not the legislature that solved it, it was the president. And it was born out of the same doctrine of necessity. It was the president who called out everybody. They had already agreed on raising it from 3% to 13% with the president. And the president made it sure, made it happen, made it imperative on the legislators to see that political solution be enacted into law. And without this approach by the then president, nothing will have been done on the floor of the House. And let us face it, the House is so lopsided. You can't get anything done in that House. It is heavily skewed against the rest of the South. And I'm not making any statement out of malice. It is out of the truth. We all know how the representation stands between the North and the South. And some people will even tell us to go and negotiate. What are we negotiating? 20 representatives from Lagos to negotiate with those who came out of the old Kano, 20 against like 100? What are we negotiating? We know exactly what they want to say when they say, go to the National Assembly. They are saying whatever you are taking there is dead on arrival. And that is unacceptable to us. Now, coming down to restructuring. Restructuring is not anything different from the interpretation that is as old as humanity. We all have to, at one time, learn something. It could be either formal education or even informal education. But there is competition, and that is where it stands, and that is where it ends. If I go to school with Chamberlain, if I pass, I pass. If I fail, I repeat. If Chamberlain passes, Chamberlain gets promoted. If we didn't have that in the old structure, with the West, the East, and the North managing their own resources, out of their own resources, making sure that they promote growth, development, and the economy, we would not have had any ounce of development. And like I said to the representative from the National Assembly the other time, could anyone compare the kind of growth when we had in the structure that actually was truly federal with what we have now? If I have a farm and Chamberlain has a farm, there's going to be a perimeter. Within my farm, let me work on my land and bring out my own resources. You work on your own land and bring out your own resources. Sell your wares, I sell mine. I make my money, you make yours. That is competition. But where a student is given a double promotion and just given anything that comes with gratis, without merit, and you expect that you will take it, that's exactly what is happening in this country. How can some people be responsible for so much and they're getting so little? How can we have mediocrity over meritocracy? The restructuring of this country is not a magic thing. It is simply going back to everything that will make a nation state to work. But if they do not want, like the adage says, a peaceful transition, a peaceful change possible, then let them be prepared for something else. Because it's not just going to happen that we are all going to roll over and die because federal government says that they are not going to be susceptible, they are not going to be looking at restructuring. Which government will say that? Perhaps a government that does not understand how it works.
Right.
This government will come and go at some time. But will the will of the people disappear?
Right. If I could just get some clarity regarding that National Assembly part of the conversation. Now, you think that as the National Assembly currently is constituted, it doesn't favor a particular part of the country. And one wonders, are you saying that as it stands, the National Assembly is not effective, is not really doing what it ought to do at this point?
The facts will always outweigh any conjecture. And it will be wrong to post any information or to make any submission that is not backed by certain factors, perhaps backed by even prescient and very serious data. But go and check the data. Go and check the data. Go and check the data of those who are in the National Assembly from the northern part of the country and those who are from the southern part of the country. Go and see the representation. And if it's just going to be about what is called demography, go and check the demography, how it is skewed. These are truths hidden in plain sight, perhaps even written more for people to see. It's just the truth. I gave the story of Old Kanu the other time. Dr. Adegoke gave the story of Old Kanu the other time. Other examples abound.
I understand. But the question is...
yes.
Right, I understand. But the question is, seeing that the National Assembly has been involved with lawmaking over the years, I mean, bills after bills turn to act. Are you saying that those bills or those acts, as they came out, are not really a representation of what Nigerians want? Is that what you're saying in terms of lawmaking?
Is the water bill a representation of what Nigerians want?
That's still a bill. I'm talking about bills turned to acts that have gone through the process and, of course, have been signed into law.
Okay, I will give you another example. All that this National Assembly has been able to do recently via bills being turned into law have always had the suspicion of people around it. A few people have been able to make certain inroads into making sure, because we talk to our representatives, that it's either certain things are delayed or certain things are made impossible. It is never about having the right kind of intention. I don't want to start going into certain details because it may require releasing certain information, because our organization will always talk to our own representatives. But even our representatives too are not comfortable with certain aspects of how these things are done.
All right. Speaking about representation, Mr. Jujimo, we do have Honorable Dachun Bagos. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. He's a member of the House of Representatives, representing Jos East and Jos South constituency. And then sitting beside him is Dr. Ahmed Sulaiman. He lectures in public law, good governance, advocates. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Honorable Bagos, let me start with you. A lot of talk about the role of the National Assembly. There's so much focus on that. What is first your thinking, yes, of course, as a member in the House, of the requirements, expectations from Nigerians about the National Assembly on this big question of restructuring the country?
Yeah, well, as a representative of the people, one of the major things that representative, be it a senator or be it a House of Reps member making the National Assembly, we derive all our laws, motions, bills, whatsoever it may be, from the people. Yes, you have the executive bills, but then, most importantly, everything comes from the people. And because if you are representing a constituency, whatsoever you are doing on the floor of the house have to reflect the yearning of the people. And yes, restructuring of Nigeria is a call that has come across the entire nation. And when we talk of restructuring, we're not talking of that Nigeria should break up, but we're looking at issues that must unite us as a country. So definitely restructuring of this country, it's something that our people have talked about. So, but it is not something that the National Assembly will just come up in the morning and say that we are restructuring. But we have to drive all the process from the people, and that's why on every legislative cycle, you have constitutional amendment, and which is one of the process that the Ninth Assembly is even looking at. And in constitutional amendment, we go back to the constituency, we go back to our constituents to look at issues that they want to be amended in the Constitution. And definitely that's the time that every region and every constituency need to bring in its input in terms of constitutional amendment. And once we are able to amend some certain areas in the Constitution, definitely we have gained some certain level of restructuring. So, but then if anybody will say that the National Assembly is not willing to key into restructuring now, well, that's not true, because most of us are affected in one area or the other. Most of us are being deprived of one thing or the other in our various regions. So we want to have true federalism, true federal character represented in all aspects of governance in Nigeria. And yes, I agree to the fact that National Assembly has over 80% role to play in that assignment. But everything depends on what the people want, because an individual or 360 people members cannot just say that we want to do this, but everything depends on what the people want.
All right, let's bring Dr. Sulaiman here. Well, you lecture in public law in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. You're also a good governance advocate. What is wrong with the call for restructuring?
Thank you, Chamberlain. A lot is wrong with the call for restructuring. What we need is institutionalization, not restructuring. I want you to look back. Wherever you have this cry for restructuring coming up, look at where it's coming from. Normally, it comes from those who have lost out in power play, in power game. Now, what Nigeria needs, it has always been an alternative response by those who have always lost out in power game. Now, or element of blackmail, they use it to either blackmail the existing government like they are doing now, or they use it to gain some advantages. I want you to look back at Nigeria. Yes, it has been quite a long way to this point. We spent, since 1913, there was a constitution which came to play in 1914. By 1922, it was amended. 1946, another constitution came about, Richard. This was amended in 1950 by Macpherson. Then 4 years later, 1954, there was another constitution, followed by 1961 and 1960 British Constitution, and later 1963. Down, if you look at our constitutional history, this issue of restructuring has always been there. So much motion, no movement. And it is time Nigerians really sit down to know what is our problem.
Is your suggestion such that because we've had those issues, those activities with the Constitution, we shouldn't do anything about it anymore?
Yes, what I'm saying is that what we need is not what they are saying. What we need is institutionalization, not restructuring. I'll give you an instance. All these arguments about restructuring has been about power sharing or federalism or all that. We've sacrificed so much on that. On the issue of confederalism, we sacrifice Sardauna, less Sardauna and Tafawa Balewa. On the issue of strong unitary system, we've sacrificed Ogui Ironsi. We've sacrificed so much in our history to this point. Now, but this issue of federalism is now a settled issue. If we need, I know the life, not just Nigeria, is dynamic. If we need any adjustment, we have a constitution and we have patterns of constitutional amendment. It is there instilled in our constitution.
All right,
and
we'll take it from
National
that
Assembly
point.
To make laws.
If you have checked the APC manifesto, did you see where they talked about restructuring and how the APC set up a committee which the Kaduna State governor headed to look into that question of restructuring? So how is it that, have they also lost out in the power equation to be doing all of those, as you suggested?
Well, the way I look at it is this. It has been a card Nigerian politicians put on the table, either as a response to demands and pressures or as a game to get what they want. But I want you to look at really how we've experienced several systems.
I'm sorry, before you move on to that point, Dr. Sulaiman, pardon me, just a minute. Are you suggesting that the APC played a game with Nigerians to get where they wanted and they didn't really mean the restructuring?
No, I'm not saying APC as a whole. What I'm saying is that, APC or PDP or whatever party is a collection of several forces and several members.
My question was directly.
To issues.
The question I did ask you was directly about
you have diverse
the APC.
response to issues.
No, let me build up again. Pardon me if you missed it. Well, what I'm saying is that I'm following up on your question. You said that those who call for restructuring are those who may have lost out in the power game. And then I did ask you, the APC spoke about it. They have a committee looking into it. They are the ruling party. How is it that they've lost out in the power game, according to your submissions?
No, I think that of APC should be a response to a pressure. This issue of restructuring has always been a pressure game. It may be in order to respond to pressures for restructuring. Because, Chamberlain, the issue is that whether we like it or not, there has been so much centrifugal and centrifugal forces in Nigeria. Those who want to pull us apart have always been putting so much pressure under the name of restructuring. Definitely in politics, you have to find a way of responding to those pressures. But coming back to the reality on ground, Chamberlain, I've traced historical development to this point. We've tried several options, constitutional options. Chamberlain, doesn't it make better sense for us to even concentrate on one system and build institutions around them? If you look at most of the issues, even this morning, that people have been talking about, there are issues that agencies and laws have been passed to take care of. Take the issue of Niger Delta. Has an agency not been established to take care of their developmental needs and all that? Has the agency lived to its expectation? So if you look at the problem with us is the institutions have not been living up to those expectations. So instead of wasting our energies and resources on this, why not concentrate on institutionalizing our efforts? How do we come up with new institutions? And institutions that are not working well, how do we do away with them? In fact, as far as I'm concerned, what Nigeria needs is rebuilding ourselves, not the structures. How do Nigerians link up to Nigeria as a country? First of all, to make just one moment, a nation, it starts from individuals.
Just one moment. Let's take this. Let's have some response to that issue that you just raised now about institutionalization as opposed to restructuring Nigeria. Let's ask Mr. Adejimo now. You have heard him. You can hear everything that he has said. How do you respond? Institutionalization as opposed to the clamor for restructuring?
The response is going to be very historical and detailed. The United States of America is 244 years old as a nation governed by a constitution. They've only been able to amend their constitution 27 times in 244 years, 27 times. One particular amendment took about 18 years. Now, let's get back to what he's trying to say. A saner community, a saner environment like the American, look at how it has taken them this time, 244 years, to make just 27 amendments to their constitution. But the British, of course, between 1946, with that unitary constitution, to 1954, and then the year of the 57, 59, and then the independence constitution, changed the constitution 4 times. Not because of any agitation like he's talking about from losers, no. From people who felt we need to engineer a structure that will make us to live together. Now, in wanting to live together, you must listen to me. The 1999 Constitution was drafted by one man, Yadudu, and a group of people in a room. That is not the people's constitution. And I have said so. That constitution will not work. You can't build something on that. And you cannot expect that that constitution will continue to serve. And if we are going to say we want to do amendments, how many amendments are we going to be able to achieve before we realize that it is useless?
Just one moment, Mr. Digimon. You also heard.
Now I'm coming to his idea of institutionalizing rather than anything else. Now he's talking about institutions. Which institutions are going to be given power and to derive their source of strength out of this 1999 Constitution? Let's face it. Which institution have we been able to build? Is it INEC with a string of inconclusive elections? What is wrong with simply having electronic voting in this country? What does it stop the INEC from doing so? He's talking about forces. Let's talk about where these forces are coming from. Those who don't want growth, those who don't want change, who just have put up this toga of wanting to do change and nothing has been done. Those who put restructuring into their manifesto and even coming back to ask us, what does restructuring mean? Is all manners of subterfuge is playing out in this country simply because some people just don't want to let go of a structure that favors them and coming up with this idea of, I'm coming, please.
Yeah. No, just one moment. There was something that you said that I wanted to, which he said that you have also tried to respond to by talking about the constitutions of various other countries. He's also mentioned the fact that the issue of restructuring has been recurrent in constitution after constitution all down through our history as a country. So how will this restructuring be? Okay, please go ahead, make your point.
That is not true. That is not true because the term restructuring only came into being in 2013. And let anybody challenge me on that. What we've been talking about, ab initio, 1953, Chief Obafemi Awolowo said we can only have a true federalism. That was in London Constitutional Conference. And he defined it, and that was reflected in the brand new Constitution in 1954. In which case, we're not talking of restructuring there. We're talking of a structure. That structure succeeded until the military took over. And we are saying that is the structure that gave us the very best. So who is talking about restructuring? Who has been talking about restructuring? I'm coming, please. The 1979 Constitution, even though it came out with certain very good ideas, 18 of such, the military came back and said they were going to throw away. Of course, they threw away. And then it became what the people said versus what the military thought was good for them. And of course, that was not going to work as well. The 1988 Constitutional Assembly in Abuja produced something very similar that the Babangida administration too watered down. We continue to have all of this. And people will continue to say, why would you want to do this to the people's will? In which case, resource control came from certain people who felt that they were being neglected. There was a time it was the other way around. In the first structure, the regions were keeping 65 to 68% of their revenue. Why is it that it is not happening now? So why should somebody complain that people are asking for true federalism? Have we not had it before? So was restructuring the thing on the lips of the South where they were asking for resource control? They were only asking for true federalism, just the way we are asking for true federalism. Restructuring came as a term when people are agitating for national conference. And I will insist that whatever we do, let us have a conference of the ethnic peoples of Nigeria to determine how they want to be governed. Nobody's going to be telling us we should stick by only one particular document that is so faulty, that is giving us all manners of insecurity, that is not allowing for growth, that is not even making policy statements that can be used.
Right.
That has given the president so much powers that ordinarily nothing can be done unless you go back to the president. What institutions are going to be particularly strengthened?
Okay,
when we
Dr.
see the
Adejimo.
way elections are being held.
Right, let's take this to Honorable Bargos now, because, I mean, as we've said, this rests with the National Assembly. Well, you think that the National Assembly might not be effective in this whole restructuring move, but Honorable Bargos, so devolution of power, autonomy, fiscal federalism, there's, of course, some people calling for more states to be created, some calling for creation of state police. It's a lot, really. And I know that for your state and even your constituency, you've had security challenges. I mean, we just recently had the killing of about 6 people, including a crown prince. And I know that creation of state police or tweaking that security structure is one of the options in this restructuring agenda. So I'm thinking, do you think that restructuring in the area of security, for example, will solve the challenge that you face, I mean, peculiar to your area? And how difficult will that be in the National Assembly? Because we've had this before and it fell through.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no doubt about the issue of restructuring. Dr. Suleiman here trying to be theoretical about some of the issues of restructuring. What is restructuring all about? Like I said earlier, restructuring is not talking about dividing the country, but even the institutions that it's talking about, we need to look at a lot of areas that have to do with real institutionalization of some of those institutions. We must restructure them. In terms of insecurity that my constituency have been bedeviled with over the years, there is no magic of institutionalizing police that you will say that can give us the police system we have today, can give us perfect security within our various constituencies and in the village. And that's why my people are calling for restructuring in terms of having state police. Because we believe that once we have state police, we'll be able to police our own communities. Once we have state police, we'll be able to know who is within our constituency. We'll be able to know who is at our own backyard. So a lot of things have to do with restructuring. And when you talk of restructuring, you're talking about even reshufflement, you're talking about amendment. The National Assembly, since last year, have called for the security architecture of this country to be reshuffled, have called for a lot of areas to be looked into in terms of insecurity, because there is no single state in this country that have not have its own share in terms of insecurity. So when we are talking of restructuring, we are not talking of being theoretical about it. We are not talking about politicians talking about insecurity, but we are talking about reality on ground. What are we talking about? If we're talking about insecurity, we're talking about federal character. Do what we have today in country in terms of appointment, in terms of employment, in terms of even employment of people in police, in the military, in various agencies, do we have true federal character? No. Because even my own constituency, the recent NDA employment recruitment that have just been done, I cannot see single name from my own place. So what are we talking about? But once we have restructuring in various areas, we already know whether you lobby or you don't lobby, you get it as a Nigerian. So that's what we are all talking about, and that is what our people have been yearning for. Because these are areas that when we don't look at it as a people, and we are talking about strong institutions,
there's this other part.
We will not get anywhere. And that is why most of us, as representative of the people, we have been talking in that line.
Okay, we ran a poll as well. And overwhelmingly, over 50% actually said that they want a referendum to be included in the Constitution. And so a lot rests with the National Assembly in terms of what they need to do. They recently come up with the Police Act 2020. They've come up with suggestions about community policing, and we still have problems. They've not addressed the way the IGP is addressed, and that's the poll right there. There's so many questions, so people look to the National Assembly saying, look, it appears as though we cannot get the desired solution from the National Assembly. After all, when they voted on the amendment of the Constitution the last time out, the clause of state policing fell through because some suggested that the godfathers of those lawmakers won't let that be. And so that is where we are. They think, look, from the National Assembly, we can't get a solution.
Yeah, that's not really true in terms of state policing. You see, people need to understand the dynamics. I can assure you that there are a lot of state governors today, if they have the security architecture in their own hands, will know what to do to address the issue of insecurity. But people have been looking at just one angle, that if they give state governors the power to control police within their own domain, they will start using it against their own opponents. That is not what we are looking at. If we are even looking at the federal government, at the federal level, where people are saying that whosoever is in power is using either the EFCC or ICPC against its opponents. So, and even whatsoever issue you have, the most important thing is that once we have these institutions being controlled by state governors and being controlled by local government chairmen who are the real people that really interact with people at the local level, I can assure you half of our problems will be solved. And when we are talking of community policing, one of the areas that we have problems with community policing is that who is even going to control the community policing? Because the community policing structure that we have now is that whatsoever information you generate from the grassroots, it has to go through the IG again. But we are looking at, let's break that chain of command. If we are going to have the issue of community policing, let the issue of community policing immediately be handled even within the local government council. Let the issue of community policing be handled within the state council. So, because as a people, like within the past 1 month, I've lost over 30 people within our own zone.
I need to just bring this in just so that, as we wind down to get everybody else in on this one. But let me ask you, the question as to whether or not the chief executives of states will abuse that, many think that shouldn't really be a headache, because these are issues that will be tabled and discussed.
Absolutely.
And then it will be fashioned out. Checks and balances will always be there, as we always have in several other things. But respond to this. How easy or difficult is it to include the clause of referendum in our constitution as the amendment is going to go on?
To me, it's not difficult, because these are yearnings that will have to come from the people. Because once it comes from the people, and like I said earlier, constitutional amendment, we go around the country. And if the people want referendum, the clause of referendum to be in the constitution, so it will be. But it has to come from the yearning of the people, because we cannot just continue in a straitjacket that this is how it is, and this is so. And again, I can assure you, once we have the issue of referendum in our constitution, who and whatsoever government that is in power at that particular time will sit up. And that is what we are calling, that is what we are talking about, strong institution. It's not just about sitting down and look at, okay, this institution, let's see how we can make it not to work, or make to work, or so on and so forth.
Let me bring in Dr. Sulaiman
here. The referendum in the constitution, to me, I support it 100%.
Okay, Dr. Sulaiman, when you say that we need to build institutions and several other things, but you have people who will easily just point out some examples. They look at how they think that the federal character principle has just been skewed. They don't see it being, they don't see it working out to the satisfaction of the entire country. They point to the AFCC saying, look, ever since the inception of AFCC, look at people who have headed that commission. So they think when you talk about institutions, it's just not the way to go.
Well, I want you to look at it this way. Nobody is saying what we have on ground is perfect. But the way people are going about this clamoring for restructuring, when they turn facts on its head, it will not solve our problem. It's not just here now. Somebody was talking about that here, and he talked about 1999 Constitution being produced by Yadudu, while everybody who knows about 1999 Constitution was, all the constitutions we had were a product for Constitutional Making Conference. And 1999 Constitution is basically drafted out of 1979 Constitution, which was tried for 4 years. You know, this is just by the side. There are a lot of facts that people get turned around just when they are making their political clamor. We want any change in Nigeria, any reform, to be an informed process, a dialogue. I'm in for a dialogue. I want Nigerians to dialogue, but let the dialogue be through constitutional means and institutions. We have National Assembly where this debate can be dialogue.
Yeah,
the constituents have been represented.
You know, when you say you want dialogue, it's a good thing. People want dialogue. But if you look at some of the constitutional conferences that we've had, there were no-go areas. And people thought, why will there be no-go areas? I mean, why will there be no-go areas? Because they needed to address key issues. For instance, the question of resource control was a thorny issue and has never really been addressed by any of those conferences.
No, you see, Chamberlain, the issue is that as a lawyer, I've done a lot of counseling, marriage counseling. If you want to counsel married couples, you have to guide the discussion, because instead of leading to a peaceful result, the whole process may even break down. So sometimes you need this dialogue may be guided. But that's why we're clamoring for institutional process. You have your member. You can put in whatever you want to put in. This is unrestricted. You can be from a professional point of view. It can be from your constituent point of view. So that all these complaints will be aggregated, will be refined through the state houses of assembly and all that. Now, take for instance the issue he's talking about, representations. We have Federal Character Commission. If you have somebody from National Assembly who is complaining about this, it is because these institutions are not living up to their expectations. Because these are people we should take our complaint to and who should find an answer. And there is a way to find an answer. Because you have oversight, you have a committee that has oversight over Federal Character Commission, you can channel your process through that. Okay. So Nigerians need to build our institutions so that our institutions will grow up to solve our problems. All right, but by the time we always clamor on this restructuring, we are taking ourselves so much back. Because Chamberlain, I want to give you some instance for
just a moment before that.
I want to give you an instance from Northern Nigeria.
Just before that, pardon me, because of our time, we just need to get some of these issues out there. Now, you may have introduced a new term into this whole debate, institutionalism. And sometimes these terms might mean the same thing, and we don't know. So let me just get you clearly what you mean. Does institutionalism involve devolution of power, for example? Can you hear me, Dr.
Institutionalism. Devolution of power can be captured by institutionalism. What I mean by institutionalism is look at the institutions we have under our constitution. How do we bring them up to live up to their expectation?
Okay, so that's the first one.
How do we come up with other institutions if there is the need for devolution of power?
I understand. Pardon me, there's a checklist I just want to run by you. So if you say devolution of power can be captured, that's one. What about fiscal federalism? Is that involved in that term, institutionalism?
Even that can be brought into discussion, into dialogue. Nigeria is a federation where we can dialogue these things.
Okay, third one, creation of state
police. But the issue is that it's the political side that we are...
Pardon me, the third one, forgive me, I need to just run through quickly. The third one, creation of state police, which is also something that is involved, that they have talked about under restructuring. Is that also under institutionalism?
It can be, but it will also give some of us to give an informed view that Nigeria is not ripe for state policing.
So maybe at the end of the day,
that is why we have
dialogue. I will disagree with that. But we are not yet right for state policing.
Chamberlain, the issue is that we need to develop we need
Okay,
to grow with our development.
Okay,
This
can we
institution
have
needs to
Honorable
come
Baggers?
at every point in time.
But doctor, you know that you have even agreed on the fact of restructuring by the institutionalism that you have just spoken about, because these are issues that, whether we like it or not, it is now the pressure. We have outgrown some of those issues that we are talking about. We have outgrown the issue of just sitting down with just one structure of police. There is no developed country that is just one structure of police. Look at even the US or England that we are talking about. England have over 40-something structure of policing down to the community level. So these are issues that we should be able to come to the table. I agree. It's not just been about political. You know, people are looking at the northerners are fighting for this area, the southerners are fighting. So it's not about ethnicity here. It's about the reality on ground. The issue of insecurity has cut across the entire northern states, have cut across most of the southwestern states. So it is time for us to come to the table as a people.
No.
Because when we start talking of the insecurity, like for me, since I know the issue of insecurity and killings in my constituency, there has not been one person that have been prosecuted.
Excuse me,
but,
I know
but the
about
issue,
all that. I visited
so the issue of
Mm.
insecurity that have to do with state policing is very important, because I know that if I have state police, the local community and the local police will go and fetch out, and they will have information on who does that. But a situation where people are being killed on daily basis and no arrest and no one has been prosecuted up till date is uncalled for. So those are issues that definitely have to call for restructuring. But when you have that the book of the people that are being killed is filled and the people that do the killing is still empty, come on, I can't keep quiet, and I can't say that I don't need restructuring. So these are issues that, doctor, we need to look at how we can really bring the issues to the table, not being political, that the North is fighting for this, the South is fighting for this. Tomorrow, people will start talking about restructuring, that it is the Christian that is, Christians are fighting for restructuring, the Muslims are saying, no, but that's not, it shouldn't come across religious line. These are issues that every Nigerian needs justice.
No, the point, I think you are missing the point. The point is not about a region or a tribe or what the point is about a developmental process. Nigeria needs to grow with its institutions. We don't need to rush. People have this misconception that you have a perfect structure that you can just build up, and tomorrow you wake up and find out that all our problems are solved. That is what we are saying, that you need to use a process of institutional system so that you develop any system that is not working well. You can change it, but gradually. Let us, yes, I agree that we need to start maybe policing. We start with community policing, see how far we go. We see how we rebuild our system institution. We rebuild, even if it gets to a point where we are ready for a state police, we build them. But let us go gradually. Let us begin to work before we start running. If you look at Nigeria, these have always affected our developmental process. When there was a clamor for Islamic law, for instance, in northern Nigeria, a lot of people thought if you just bring up Islamic law tomorrow our problems are solved. But the issue is that you have to institutionalize this even among the community, among the individual, so that those ideals of Sharia are reached. So people just wake up and today, if you also look at how people clamor for Buhari, for instance, a lot of people think if you just elect President Buhari today, tomorrow the problem is solved.
All right, gentlemen, just a moment. We need to go to break, gentlemen.
You need to support the same Buhari.
What we will do, gentlemen, is that we'll come back to this conversation. So perhaps take it from Dr. Sulaiman's perspective. How do we walk before we start running? Or have we been walking for a while? Is it time to start running? Well, we'll start off from Lagos when we come back in a moment. Welcome back, gentlemen. We're winding down now, so it's going to be short, sharp. But Mr. Dejumo, let me start with you. The how question. How do we get ourselves to a table and talk about these things?
Well, you have to give me more time because others have spent a considerable amount.
But remember,
of time.
you started out before them too. Remember that.
Okay, let's get down to it. I'm saddened by what I'm hearing today. I'm saddened because Obviously, it is those who are benefiting from this very skewed structure, this ineffective structure, this particularly divisive structure, that are saying there's nothing wrong with the structure and it's all about institutions. How do you strengthen an institution that has a totally different trajectory? A federal institution employed 530 northerners to just about 98 southerners. And somebody is telling me it's about institutionalizing. What? What are you institutionalizing? If you want to make something strong, then it's going to be devoid of inequality. It's going to be devoid of inequity. It's going to be devoid of lack of opportunity for others. It's going to be about consideration for a unity that will have to come from what will be severally distributable to all the federating units. You don't do things your way and expect that I will take it. It's not just going to happen. And you are talking about Nigeria is we are in a rush. We were doing so well. The economy of the Western region was at par with that of Singapore in the 1960s. We were doing so well. Our economy was at par with that of Thailand and the other Asian countries. We want to go back to those things. We don't want to regress, just like we're now stagnant. Look, we need to speak the truth here. We need to speak the truth here. Nigeria is not working. If people like Papa Adebanjo, people like President Obasanjo, if the people like Wole Soyinka, Professor Wole Soyinka, and General Akinade are saying that restructure this country before it breaks, and even the vice president, why are we going to be grandstanding about the fact that we have serious issues?
All right, so
we have serious issues.
Don't forget the how part of it. How do we proceed with that?
How do we proceed? With a meeting of ethnic nationalities to discuss how they want to be governed. That is the only thing that can save this country. And for those who are restricting the structuring, it will have to be the last thing they will have to beg us with. Maybe they don't realize that. People are simply tired of this structure. It is not working. It is stifling people. It's not allowing people to be able to come out and fulfill their potentials.
All right.
It's not just about clamoring for this or clamoring for that. It is about seeking justice.
But then one of the issues, Mr. Adebanjo, just one moment.
If we want to live together, then let us live together based on what is equitable.
Just one moment.
It's not going to be about what you want.
A number of people, just one moment, Mr. Adebanjo, so many people have been talking about the same thing. But then the question Chamberlain asked is about how. Definitely we have to call a meeting. Just one moment. Who will call this meeting? How will the meeting be processed? And who is going to champion it? Who is going to execute some of the recommendations? Because the experience of 2014 is still fresh in the mind. Some people came together, came up with brilliant ideas, and even though it was a federal government initiative, it's still where it is, a report. So, talking about how, give us your idea of what to do.
I'm giving you the final answer now.
Okay.
It rests with the president. The 2014 National Confab was an initiative of the executive at that time, and they did a good job. If the National Assembly is serious, they don't need us. Go back to that document and work on it. This Mr. President said ab initio that it will have nothing to do with that brilliant contributions by Nigerians that took all the time to produce over 600 resolutions.
Okay.
And that is, sorry, please. And that is where the problem lies. If this president is really interested in moving this country forward, it's either he will go back and revisit that, use that as a template, or he should call a meeting just like the other president did. We need to sit down and talk, but to grandstand, even gaslight Nigerians into believing that we don't need restructuring.
All right, let's bring in as we wind down now.
I'm sorry, please. Let me finish, please. I only wonder how Sierra Leone happened.
You have to make it quick because we're out of time, really. Just conclude on that. Conclude on that.
Yes, I really wonder how Sierra Leone happened, and people will say, oh, we didn't see it coming, or any other. It's about how people feel,
Okay.
and these things are germane, and people are trying to discredit it, or perhaps to wave it away, simply because they are benefiting from a system that does not represent the whole.
All
How
right.
can that continue to be?
All right, then, Dr. Sulaiman. Well, you know, the calls are increasing. There are lots of people who are not in political space or politics who are also, who think that we should have that conversation. And that, look, it should be no holds barred one. It should be properly structured, but it has to be discussed how the country moves together. That's for you, Dr. Sulaiman.
Constitutional dialogue through constitutional means and institutions is welcome, because nobody can live in isolation and static. Life is dynamic. But the problem is, if you look at all the issues he raised now, one, ethnic nationality. Gone are those days. These are days of those who are 70 years, 80 years old. But youth, Nigerians of today, we look for inputs from professionals and informed contributions, not ethnic contribution. We are tired of centripetal forces. We don't want anybody to be taking us back with ethnic calls, tribal calls, religious call. No, we want Nigeria to move forward. Let all professionals, even if it means a confab of professionals, or if it means National Assembly harnessing informed views of all professional enlightened citizens, and then you now use that as a process of dialogue to further strengthen Nigeria. That is welcome. But this issue of blackmailing a country, or when any part feel feel is not getting what it wants, it start threatening the central government that okay, let's break out, we are going out. Nigeria should have grown that infantile narcissism.
When you say that when any part feels threatened, they come up with this, it means that all parts have done it. So why should one part say criticize the other part when they're doing the same thing? But that's an aside. But you are,
it's because all parts have done it that.
Okay, well, you lecture in law.
That is why we are tired of that game.
I know. Let me just ask you this final one before we get to Honorable Bagos. Just hang on a minute. I mean, how were the regions created in the first place? Was it through referendum or confab in the first instance in the history of this country?
We know when the British came in, they found all regions with their own specifics. They
wasn't it by referendum?
Northern Nigeria, and then by the 1913 constitution, which came to place in 1914, they amalgamated.
But there was a referendum,
what they wanted before was
there?
A strong region. But because of the forces, 1954 and up to 1961 constitution recognized strong region.
Dr. Sulaiman,
so by the
we
time
have had the referendum in this country. What is wrong with having it again?
Because we have done it time without number, done it in Lagos, done it in London, done it in Abuja, done it in 1976, done it in 1988, done it in 1994, done it in 1998. The whole world is all waiting for us to be doing that.
Have we done it more than
we should start looking
the Western countries?
Institutions.
Have we amended our laws more than some Western countries?
With how do we come up with institutions? How do you come up with institutions that assured quality education? How do you come up with institutions that assured fertile land and agriculture? How do you come up with institutions that...
Dr. Sulaiman, it will sound to me, to many other people, that what you are essentially saying, we should restructure our institutions. But that's, by the way, let me take this with Honorable Bagos. There is a particular constituency that we seem to be ignoring in all of our constitutions and in all of our conversations. And this particular constituency are the ones that formed the core nationalists of the independence era, the young people. We seem to be ignoring them in all of this conversation. Yeah. And we seem to be disconnecting them from these realities. What can we do to bring them on board?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very serious area that in terms of national conversation that we have ignored the youth. And these are areas that when we look at the youth bulge and the agitation about restructuring, and so on and so forth, it has to do with the youth. Because the elders and the elites that are talking about these restructuring issues are not just even talking about of themselves, but they are talking about even us, the youths. Because if we don't look at the youth bulge that we have in this country, and if it's not been controlled through restructuring, you and I will not be seated here, because they will be an instrument of violence tomorrow. So, and that is why the issue of restructuring is very, very key and important. And you look at leaders, I'm 44 now, but still up till today, some people still call me that this young boy in National Assembly. When at the age of 44, when we had the people, Azik, the Tafa Balewa, and Gowon, who was 33 as a president. So our elites, some that are calling for restructuring, have really looked at, look, we need to carry the youths along. So that's an area that we are clamoring for, that carrying the youths along in all areas, the issue of not too young to run that has come into place, how can it really be institutionalized? Those are the areas that we are talking about. Not just saying that the institutions that are on ground, but every institutions need to be restructured. For instance, the National Assembly, as far as I'm concerned, even the National Assembly needs to be restructured, because it's only the Senate that have 3 representatives from every state. No matter the number and your population, you have 3. But the House of Reps is different, and that's why we are calling for restructuring even in delineation, so that we have equal representation across all states, so that one state will not say that they have 20 and another state is saying that we have only 8. But when we restructure the National Assembly in delineation of our wards and our constituencies, we'll have equal representation. So these are issues that we are looking at, and referendum definitely is a welcome idea for me.
Meaning that at least we have to pay a lot more attention now to that 10 billion that has been approved for census and delineation of certain constituencies as well. But we have to thank you all for coming on. Honorable Dachun Bagos, Dr. Ahmad Sulaiman, and Mr. Agboyega Adejimo. Thank you all for your perspectives this morning.